we'll go right to our guest. Look, with all the movement in college basketball, everything going on with coaches in the world today, who better to bring on than our favorite coach and the author of 10 Principles of a Character Coach, Gary Waters. Gary, thanks for the time today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
We're fantastic. There's not a loss of things to talk about. That's for sure. The sports world spins around. And again, we didn't know who else to go to ask. I mean, there's so much movement right now, coaches and NCAA football following the end of the season. You're obviously kind of somebody who's a spectator of it. You see what's going on in basketball. Can you talk about how the landscape has changed for coaches and schools right now?
Yeah, it has definitely changed. I mean, and we're not talking about one thing. We're talking about numerous things. For instance, let's take the portal, the student portal. I mean, they're having more kids in the portal than they've ever had ever. Like right now, like let's just take football as an example. They got over 1,200 kids in the portal, and they only have about 800 destinations. So what are these kids going to do if they don't get to transfer to another school and the other school has given away their scholarship? I mean, there's a lot of things that really get you scared.
Well, Gary, we've talked to coaches, we've talked to athletic director, we talked to Ward Manuel when the portal first started opening, and the concern seemed to be at the outset that not just the competing for players that are already or student athletes that are already at schools is what does it do to the mentality of the student athlete? Do they immediately, instead of learning to compete and dealing with the things that you have to deal with in life, the easier out seems to be, hey, if I'm not starting in year one, I'm going to leave. I'm not
Yep.
going to compete. I'm just going to look for a better opportunity. And while you want to always be able to look for a better opportunity, there's something to be said, especially when you're that age, of learning to compete and learning life's lessons. As a coach yourself, what would you have done, or what would you have said to any student athlete who came into you and said, who wasn't a starter during a year, and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about entering the transfer portal"?
Oh man. Well, first thing I would do is, because normally they're getting this direction from someone else as well, and oftentimes it's their parents. I wouldn't just sit down with the player alone. I would make sure I had the parents in there so they can understand everything too. That's number one. Number two, we are facing probably our biggest issue in sports, and the term that I use for that is lack of loyalty. See, no one is loyal anymore. My parents would have told me, you got to finish the job before you do anything, and so before you go anywhere. So today in sports, they don't tell you that. If you're unhappy, you talk with your parent. Your parent agrees with what you're saying, and then they try to find the next movement. And when I would ask that question to them, I would first ask them, why do you truly want to transfer? Because sometimes they think the grass is greener in another place, and it's not even close to that. They just don't see how the grass is growing. So you have to really sit down with them and go over all that stuff.
So obviously, coaching at all levels is under scrutiny now. The biggest news of the week on the coaching level for professional sports is Urban Meyer and his 11-month term coming out of college, trying to make it in the pros. You're somebody that's been synonymous in coaching with the term character. And
Yeah.
I've got audio from Jeff later talking about Urban Meyer and character when he was hired. You hear stories about how some coaches treat players, assistant coaches. If the stories are true, what's your reaction when you hear some of these stories that come out of players saying how they were treated, or other coaches saying how they were treated?
Well, literally, that's the reason why I wrote the book, because I was, at the time, college basketball was going through some issues, and coaches were doing unethical things and dishonest things. And I wondered, I said, are we looking into this correctly? And should we really check the coaches on this? And you asked me what would I say. I would be in disagreement with how they're behaving, and I think someone needs to check them on it. Now, in the pros, that's a whole different issue because I don't think they hire you for your ethics. I think they hire you to win, and they pay you a lot of money to win. And so, like a person like Urban Meyer, if his morals were questionable, they didn't matter. That didn't matter to them at the moment. They wanted conversation, and that conversation had to relate to what could you do to help this program move to the next level. And if you can give them the right conversation, they move forward. And I think when it's happened at the collegiate level, sometimes you get athletic directors like that as well, especially in the Power 5 conferences, because they want you to win. It's a lot of money involved. And so they want to make sure that you understand that if you don't win, you're out of here. So you do what you have to do.
Yeah, but you talk about character so much, especially in the book. Are we at a point, especially even in the pros, you had this situation with Urban Meyer. Character did matter. Character mattered because players are now empowered to make sure that they can't be physically and figuratively kicked. I mean, you have a situation with Urban Meyer where one of his first acts was to bring in a coach who had been accused of things that players in college were complaining about. And the players and the pros said, you know what? We're not going to put up with this. You can't bring a guy in here with this kind of character. We don't have to put up with it. So does character matter now more because student athletes and players are empowered to speak up?
Well, you know what? I would want to say yes, but I'm telling you, when it gets to a point where they look at the situation and they say that, hey, we gotta have the best outcome, they sometimes overlook character. Now, there's going to be certain segments that they are defined by character, but they overlook this term altogether today. And if you show that you can win, that's secondary. Now, it's important to the institution and it's important to administration, but what ends up happening is if you're winning, they can overlook certain things. If you're losing, they won't overlook anything. See, and that's what happened to Urban Meyer. See, if he would have been winning, I'm telling you, we wouldn't have this conversation today. But because not only was his character questionable, he was losing at a high rate. So now they're saying, hey, let's throw in and, doesn't matter what happens here, we'll bite the bullet.
I wanted to ask you, we saw some news this week. It was signing day in college football. Huge surprise when the number one recruit chose Jackson State, historically black college, over Florida State. Obviously, Deion Sanders attracting some attention there. It made a lot of news and headlines. Can you talk about the significance of this and the role that historically black colleges play here? Because I think they often get overlooked.
They sure do, and you're right. That was a big issue that went on when this young man decided to go to Jackson State. And when you think about this whole thing, is that if you go back in time, the historically black colleges had many professional athletes that went into the NFL, and some of the better ones came out of there. And as time went on, because so much I want to say attention and connection was made with different people, that they decided if you're not part of the power group, meaning the Power 5 and the better institutions, they didn't think you had the ability to do this. And so they actually walked away from the historically black colleges. Still, the athletes were still there. And they could still go in that direction, but they felt at the power conferences, the athletes were bigger, better, and stronger, so they went in that direction.
So let's circle back to the NILs. I think we first started talking about the name, image, and likeness stuff. Does NIL now equalize things? Does it level the playing field for schools like HBCUs because players can now go there and we not have the issues that we had? I heard I apologize. I heard somebody say, I can't remember who it was this week, say that now people are complaining because Deion Sanders was able to bring somebody to an HBCU when for years there was money that was being given to athletes at bigger schools with boosters, and now it's being done legally, and the people are complaining all of a sudden. Are we now at a point where the playing field is being leveled as a result of NILs?
I hate to say this, but I don't think so. I mean, you could take historically black college, and you can bring one player in there, and he's not gonna make as much as one player that goes to the Power Five. When I tell you this, it's the playing field is so high. A prime example. One of my friends here that was an athletic director, and his grandson was playing for a team in Texas, correct? And on his team, his quarterback was the number one quarterback in Texas. He in his junior year he committed to Texas, and then Ohio State came into the picture and said, "Hey, it's just a verbal, so it doesn't really mean a whole lot." So they went after it, and they gave him an NLI. I think it was 1.3 million or 1.4 million with a company, and he was there for this year, and he realized he didn't get to play much, and so he didn't meet the contract. And so what he ended up doing, he jumped into the portals, leaving and going back to Texas, where he's from. See, when this whole thing is done, is who's got the most when you deal with the NLI, and the bigger universities can come up with people you've never imagined that can bring sources that you could never imagine. So I don't think it's even close.
Tom Brady's getting in on the game now, getting endorsements. Wanted to ask you about the college basketball coaching. There's a proposal out there. The NABC is forming a leadership panel with conference commissioners, athletic directors, athletes, but most importantly, coaches, to try and help make policy and legislative decisions for college basketball, recruiting calendar, staff, budgetary oversight. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that as somebody who has been an avid person who has watched the way that college basketball operates.
Well, when I tell you this, it's been long overdue because, I was on the NABC board and I understood all, and, I was at a mid-major school on the board with all Power 5 schools. And so, I would try to bring in things in to help the mid-majors, but you can only go so far. And but when you think about the rules, there are rules that fit certain schools that don't fit another. And that's why you need everyone involved in that process so they can give their side of whatever the information's on and understand to help each institution. And when you look at when on your board, if you only, or the group that you're communicating with, if the only ones you're talking to is, say, Power 5 schools, they're going to do what's best for the Power 5 schools. So now with the NABC board being mixed with Power 5 schools, a few mid-major coaches, so on, now they can come down and help in the decision-making process to help everyone.
Well, yeah, but are you not concerned? Let's say this goes through. Are you not concerned that in basketball, the same thing will happen that seems to be happening or moving towards that way with football, is that the Power 5 is basically formed, and if they don't get their way, there's constantly threats that they'll move along. Is the basketball community, and can the universities survive the Power 5 ultimately trying to take control no matter what?
Well, see, we must be real with this. The one that is in control is the football aspect because it's all predicated on the money. I mean, it's just the football is playing for the non-Olympic sports, and so everyone's looking at what their feelings are. So when I think of football, yes, it's very difficult to think of that. But when you think of basketball, because you have March Madness and the national championship, everyone's involved, it's still a little hard to put you in that position.
Coach, as we let you go, I hope you did get to see the rack shaking. I'll give you my Rutgers plug as they beat Purdue on the last second shot last week. Always fun to get to talk to you, your insights. Always give us a little bit of good guidance to follow. Hope you get to come back with us and keep us updated what's going on. Thanks so much.
Well, I'm in retirement, so I got a lot of free time. Anytime you want to communicate with me, don't hesitate to call.
Wait, coach, I thought there was another book coming sometime soon.
Oh, it's done. It's done, literally. And it's titled Coaching Millennials from a Character Perspective. I'm really excited about it. It's done. Now I got to do the whole work with the publisher and all that. So I'm expecting about a year and a half, that one will be out.
We can't wait.
We'll keep having you back leading up to it to start dropping some knowledge of what's going to be in there. And then when it comes out, we'll definitely do that too. Thanks so much, Coach. You have a great one.
Well, you take care. And it's been great talking with you.